Hey folks, this is Danny. You're tuning into part 2 of our sit-down conversation with music artist Bomethius. If you haven't already, check out part 1, as this is a direct continuation of the same interview done in the same sitting. Enjoy.
I was teaching these super wealthy kids. I'm very catered to. And they're not my students anymore, so I feel comfortable telling this story.
Can we get names, addresses?
No.
Okay, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Little Jeffrey.
Good.
At 4907. No. Jeffrey's sitting up there at the counter and teaching his sister. I taught them both violin. And Jeffrey has been told to do his math, and he's not excited about this. And I know that because Jeffrey, every few seconds, is just making little brat noises.
Oh.
He's like throwing his pencil and hitting the thing and like throwing the page because he pretends to erase and he has to get down and go get it. And his mom comes in every few seconds like, Jeffrey, do your math. And then she leaves. And like, I'm just trying to teach a violin lesson this whole time.
Yeah.
And finally, his sister's done. And I kind of liked seeing this kid unhappy. And so I used to say his name really emphatically. I was like, Jeffrey, it's your turn now. And Jeffrey, is totally not excited to be there at all. And he's like, gets down, and he like walks over and he opens his violin case and he gets his violin out and he grabs his crumpled music from his case. This has not been practiced at all. And he walks up to the stand where I am. And he looks at me, and he looks at the stand, and then he just raises his arm all the way back and throws the piece of paper at the stand, and it just kind of flits and floats its way down to the ground, where it lands on the carpet. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, wondering what in the world is going on. And then he proceeds to back up and throws himself upon the couch behind him. But as he's making contact with the couch, his mom comes around the corner, and it's too late. He's already committed to gravity. And she sees him sitting, and me just standing there like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
And she's like, Nicholas, what are you? And he so fast is trying to get up. And he's and he just sounds like a little South Park character. He's like, I was trying to get to me. I was trying so hard, Mom. You don't understand. And she's just yelling no, Jeffrey, you're not doing it. And all this happening literally 3 feet away from me. They're just screaming at each other. And then she grabs his head and whispers really violently and steps back. And then she goes, now what do we say to Mr. Jonathan? And I don't even know what we say to Mr. Jonathan. I have no idea.
You're like, what do we say to Mr. Jonathan?
And this kid's vision, his gnarled eyes, his grotesque grimace chiseled on his features, twist up to look at me. And he's all of his being is shaking with how angry and unhappy he is about being there. And all he says is, I'm happy to be here.
How much joy did you get in that moment?
I laughed so hard.
In front of both of them?
That's so
Mom
good.
was not laughing at all. But I'm sorry. If your
That's
kid
funny.
is being a piece of shit and you grab him
And that's
tell
what your
him
parenting advice is?
to tell the
Right.
teacher an obvious falsehood. You're not even apologizing for your
No.
reckless, disgusting behavior. It's just
Act like it didn't happen and act like you're happy.
to be
Jeffrey, that's good. I'm happy to be here.
So
That's such a... Oh, gosh. That's such a powerful phrase. I love that.
When you're teaching, and so then sometimes when you have those kids who clearly don't want to be there, how do you feel about it as you're teaching them something that they just despise with their whole being?
I mean, it kind of is what it is. Typically, you'll win. I mean, typically you either win a kid over or they stop. So it isn't really any skin off of mine back.
Do you usually win them over by you or by the content?
Typically it's the content, but the majority of the time, especially with younger kids, it's I've never had to work hard a day in my life, and suddenly music is demanding a lot of me.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to that, and that's uncomfortable, and I definitely don't want to do it.
Mm.
And so there's really nothing I can do about that because there's no magic. what we do in 30 minutes once a week or once every 2 weeks, like, that's not where it happens. It happens at home, and, like, you just have to be consistent. Like, you don't even have to do a lot. At least 5 minutes a day consistently every day in a row, like, you'll be fine.
Right.
That's all I'm asking. Like, I don't even ask that much. Because, I mean, quite frankly, it's proven that the students that you don't ask a lot of sometimes actually are more consistently capable. Because they don't feel like they... And that's the thing is, like, you have so many teachers that demand, like, 30 minutes to an hour of practice. Well, most adults can't focus on anything for 30 minutes to an hour. And if you're making yourself do it and you're not focusing anymore, you're actually just doing bad things. You're actively committing detrimental things.
No, like, practice does not make perfect. It just makes permanent.
Yeah, exactly. And you might make something permanent that is definitely not perfect.
That was good.
It's not original.
I know. It felt not original, but I still haven't heard that. I've never heard that, though.
Destroy!
I didn't mean to say it like that. No, you said it so fluidly that I was like, okay, this is something. But I've never heard that before. That's really good. I need to use that.
Have you ever, in the kids that you're teaching, has there ever been a moment where you've, like, seen a little bit of yourself in the kids that you're teaching, or not even a little bit?
Like myself now, or myself as a kid? Because, like, as a kid, I didn't want to be there either. So, like, for me, there's frequently times where I'm like, oh man, I just feel so bad for Marla right now.
Right.
It was my teacher when I was, you know.
Okay.
You know, but no, I haven't really come across a student that strikes me as where I was like, oh, I relate to you, you know. Most of them it's just like, yeah, you don't like working hard, do you? Guess what? It's the rest of your life.
Yeah, really though. You were talking about how you were exposed especially to classical music growing up.
Oh, yeah.
So, when was the transition out of classical music, and what would you say inspires you the most now? Not necessarily your favorite music, but what music do you listen to and you're like, oh, freak, I gotta write right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's definitely where
I
wouldn't call. I talk to this guy all the time. I wouldn't call like Jacob Collier one of my favorite artists, but every time I listen to him, I'm like, God damn, it's so interesting. I need to write now. I need to.
Really? He does that for you?
Yeah, for some reason.
Whoa, was that some POV in that statement?
He definitely passed judgment there.
Yeah,
but like, it's just because he's throwing so many ideas at you at once that I'm like...
Yeah, to me, it's intellectual masturbation.
That's so funny. There's
that sounds like
many
Mac,
people.
though.
Really?
There are so many people. There are so many people that I know, music makers specifically, that have that exact same opinion. That are like, this is a guy that just knows some things and is trying to prove that he knows them.
Right, and so like, to me, every once in a while he'll have something really interesting. But for the most part, when I think Collier's at his best is like when he's doing a really clever reharmonization of someone else's material.
Mm-hmm.
His material is just, I mean, it's like, I finally, in the past like few years, at some point I was in New York City in Times Square, and I hated it with like all of my being, because it was just overload and so much, I mean, screens everywhere and all these people, and no one's looking at anyone, and no one cares about anything. And that's how I feel listening to Jacob Collier. It's just like, okay.
You're just adding shit. For
you know notes. That's cool, I guess.
Right.
What are you trying to say? Because as far as I'm aware, you're not actually saying anything.
Right. So, have you ever seen anything of his, like, interviews or, like, he does master classes all the time?
I've seen that video where he, like, explains music theory to a kid and the
Yeah. Is there any part of you as you're watching that you're like, is this guy really going to represent music theory?
I'm okay with that, because I have a very low opinion of music theory. Like, that's why Lively, the theory professor at SMU, he was my favorite theory professor at SMU, because he took himself exactly as seriously as someone who teaches music theory at SMU should.
Which was?
Not at all. But I liked that he had the decency and honesty to just do that. Most of them are like, well, I've studied with such and so I know how to regurgitate such and so ideas that have been around for 400 years that I will now regurgitate. And it just is mindless nonsense that actually, much like academia in general has very little to do with reality or anything that happens off campus.
Yeah.
And so when you go out into the real world,
it's all theory, no practice.
And most of the theory you learn actually has very little to do. Why are we learning performance practice from Bach's era? Why are we learning rules based in Bach's music? Do you know how long it's been since anyone wrote Bach's music? A long time.
Yeah, right.
There's no reason to be learning this shit.
Yeah.
None. Maybe like for a week, because it's like, this is funny. It doesn't work. Okay, so let's...
Right. Well, yeah, but the interesting part should be, or what they should be doing is, this is how it could potentially apply to you,
right?
And this is why we do not do it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they don't
do that. And so, to me, I mean, Collier's cool because he does know a lot, and he knows a lot about how theory works today. Mm-hmm. Like, he's someone who obviously knows the kind of theory that we should have been taught in school. Everyone should be capable of doing what Jacob Collier does.
That's a hot take, but I appreciate that. It shouldn't
be special.
Yeah.
Because what he's doing actually isn't that special.
Yeah.
He just knows things.
Yeah.
Anyone can know things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He just has two world-class musician parents that taught him from...
But also, he studied with Herbie Hancock and everybody else. Like, he has all... Like, he has the grounding and the real... not the real, the classical theory, I suppose, but then he also has the jazz theory. The jazz theory, mastered, ironically enough, white theory. And then it was like, let's make this much better, please.
Right.
And so, it's fine. He's fine. It's not like I don't want Jake Collier to exist. I'm just not going to listen.
Sure.
I'm probably not going to listen to him.
Yeah.
And when I do, I'm just kind of like, why?
Right.
Turn it off.
And it's not like right. So who does inspire you? Who do you listen to and you're like, jeez, I need to write right
now? When I'm actually writing, like lyrics, or I'm also trying to work on a book right now, because like they're all the ideas. So Bomethius doesn't just. He didn't just start as like a funny character. It was like, I have a lot of fucked up thoughts in my head that I've got to get out of here. And so I started writing them down. Mm-hmm. And then I started singing them. But not all of them you can sing. Mm-hmm. And so I have like 50 pages of things that you can't sing. And so it will be a book eventually. So when I'm writing, I listen to like Frank Zappa and Beefheart and like all this crazy out there music that I would never listen to, or even publicly endorse. So please, wipe. I'm just kidding. But it's like it's so cacophonous and strange,
right?
And so alien to any of my sensibilities that I can actually like think because it doesn't distract me at all or get me excited.
Sure, that's interesting. So you listen to the exact opposite of inspirational music.
Yeah, all of my antithesis. When I've had a really hard day and I need to not. I just need something. I listen to Enya or Jack Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was not expecting that.
Yeah, no. Jack Johnson is
I love the Jack Johnson!
I know. Jack Johnson's my Sunday morning shit.
Yes!
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about banana fucking pancakes.
No.
I'm talking about, like, To the Sea. He's got a couple records that are just great. Mm-hmm. They're just great. They're so pleasant. If pleasant made a noise, it's that.
It's Jack Johnson, right?
And Enya is kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you guys know Enya?
I do not. You're looking at me with very judgment eyes. Okay. I mean, but now I know. Now I know.
Right. So Enya, I think is, if not the highest, one of the highest selling recording artists of all time.
Woof! I'm just uncultured.
But she's never toured.
Okay.
Which is also one of the crazy cool things. She lives in a castle in Ireland.
Christ.
And she interweaves Celtic music. Sometimes she sings in Latin. Like, it's incredible stuff. It's really very fun. And she's one of the first artists to do a lot of layering of her own voice.
Yeah.
And so there are tracks of hers, I mean, all the way back to like the 90s or maybe even the 80s, where there's like over 200 vocal tracks of just her voice on a single song. So she was kind of one of the pioneers for that kind of thing, like bedroom pop, like that. Yeah. Enya started it.
Yeah.
You know?
We talked a bunch about bedroom pop. Yeah.
Enya also, like, I don't know if you guys are into like Lord of the Rings, but like a couple of the Lord of the Rings movies, the credits song is Enya.
See.
So like
This is gonna sound like a joke, but I actually found Enya with my siblings as we were in a Target. You know how like way back when in Target they had those like little panels. You know what I'm talking about? With next to the CDs where you would like press for demos and everything. And
They had these like
found it.
headphones that were always
Yeah.
like in decrepit condition.
COVID-19 all over it.
That's where it started. If anywhere, that's where it started. So you put the things on and you start listening to everything. And I remember like tapping through like, you know, I don't even think Michael Bublé was a thing at the time, but
Sure,
you know,
sure.
it's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
similar. And you're like, whatever. And then he comes on, I'm like, whoa, what's that?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm
That
like,
is
oh
the
my
feeling.
gosh, yeah.
No, it's incredible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my friends back in Seattle one time just listened to her entire discography, which is huge. And he took his headphones off at the end and he was like, she never wrote a bad song.
Just as like objective
That's
fact.
so good.
Video, she
That's
never
so
wrote
good.
a bad song, which I think might be true.
Yeah.
I don't listen to her whole discography, but I mean some of her stuff is pretty incredible. So that stuff when I'm super sad, I still come back to Mozart.
Yeah.
The Requiem, he has this. I was talking to my Uncle Ben a couple weeks ago, and Mozart has a mass in C minor called the Grosse Messe, or it's the Big Mass.
Oh, okay.
And my Uncle Ben was like, "Yeah, dude. Like, do you listen to the Gross Mess? I really love the Gross Mess. I don't know."
It's just like underground indie thing, the Gross Mess. That's good.
Nobody knows it anymore, but the Gross Mess is one of Mozart's best works. I don't. The Gross Mess.
Little thing. Man, okay.
So I do go back to Mozart frequently. Some of his piano concertos, the 20th and the 21st in particular, I really, really like those. And then some of his symphonies I really, really like, but I haven't actually listened to those. The 29th in A major, I really like that one. But it all kind of comes and goes. I had a massive Muse kick for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
The band Muse?
Yeah, Muse, yeah.
Fascinating.
Like I'd say going into high school, I listened to Muse.
That sounds about right.
sounds
No,
about right.
I think
I was like, you
I
know
went through
what?
that too. I think we're all in the same boat of
think,
right
yeah.
into high school. Let's just listen to a little bit of Butterflies and Hurricanes.
Yeah.
And just have a good time.
Incredible.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
And as I've gotten older, my tastes have obviously grown. And,
Sure.
And so you come back and look at Muse, and you're like,
You're like, why Muse?
You wrote those lyrics, Matthew.
Oh, right,
Why
right.
did you do that?
Well, funny enough, okay.
Like proof that you don't have to have good poetry to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that poetry really needed the music, like just like you said. It really needed the music. Yeah,
And they did deliver that.
Yeah, and hey, as long as you turn off your brain for a second, just let it absorb. You're fine.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Funny enough, I actually found out about Muse, and I started listening to Muse because my sister, when I was 12, dragged me to an Owl City concert.
Whoa.
I know.
Wait,
She wouldn't have had to drag me. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, I was not an Owl City fan because this was at the time where I was in middle school, and so all of like the girls were obsessed with Owl City,
Sure.
and all the guys were like, the girls like it, so we can't, and so I hated Owl City. Obviously, had to, and so we go to an Owl City concert, and it's hitting. It's doing a pretty good job, right? They're hitting, but then I saw this one kind of 30s, maybe like early 30s guy. He's like a little overweight, like totally bald already, and he's just like kind of sitting next to me, like seems out of it. And I'm 12, so I have no perception of social cues. And so I'm like, "You okay?" And he was like, "You like this? You should listen to Muse." Like that was all he said, and I was like, Muse? How do you spell that? What's Muse? And I went home and I became a fan of Muse.
Dude, that is like the greatest I became a fan of Muse story I've ever heard.
How many I became a fan of Muse stories?
Like, you like this? You should listen to me.
You like Owl City?
There's like some overweight guy that's sweating
True that.
profusely everywhere he
True
goes,
that.
and he goes to Owl City concerts to tell 12-year-olds to listen to Muse.
So I'm also curious though.
It's like a Jehovah's Witness but Muse.
That's good. That's good. The
other band is Weezer.
Oh, dude.
So my favorite Weezer story ever is like pretty recently because they put out 2 records in the past year. And so they had like posted they were going to do a live show at the LA Philharmonic because their second to last record is all string work. Like it's all full orchestra actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is not a single electric instrument on the entire record. It's incredible. But they posted they were going to do these concerts, and so someone had commented right underneath, the worst band in the world. And then another person commented underneath that, I know, right? I'll see you at the show. And if that doesn't perfectly summarize the Weezer fandom,
community, yeah.
like nothing else does.
That's pretty good. I am curious, based off what you just mentioned, the how many of the instruments do you actually record on your album?
Mm-hmm.
So are you talking about this album?
Yeah, this one specifically.
When I heard the saxophone, I was thinking to myself, was Jonathan playing a saxophone?
Is that female voice his own?
No. Yeah, I just sped it up and put it up. No. So as the records have gone on, I've played less and less. So I do not play drums. So all the drums you ever hear, anywhere you hear on Bomethius stuff, is not me. I don't tend to play the bass tracks. I can, but I would rather someone who knows what they're doing do that.
Do you still write it? You just don't play it?
No, and that's the other thing. I don't. I do not write down my stuff. I might write it like a chart, chord chart or something, but I never tell my musicians what to play. Because if I have to tell them, then they're not playing.
Yeah, then it's like, I'm not sure if you're the guy that would
Yeah, you're not the guy.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. It's that I want it to be, I want whoever comes in to play to add something that's their own.
Yeah.
And if they're adding something that's totally not working at all, then I bring the hammer down. Like, don't do that. Try this, and then they try that, and then they do something better than that. And that's what it's about.
It's giving them the seed, so then the seed can grow.
Exactly. And one of the reasons I do that is because, one, I only want to play with musicians. I don't want to play with instrumentalists. And two, when you're an orchestra, the thing you hear the most from the people around you, the oboe player and the flute players and the violins and children, and you'll hear people like, why did Brahms write this? What was Beethoven thinking? He doesn't know my instrument at all. And you hear that all the time.
Which kind of makes sense.
It totally makes sense. They don't play your fucking instrument. They don't know.
Right.
And so for me, I don't ever want to have to do that to someone.
Yeah.
I don't want some saxophone player to come in and be like, play this. Isn't that a cool idea? And they're like, dude, it doesn't work at all.
That's become a more and more common thing in theater that we've seen like over the past like 15, 20-ish years, is that there are so many new plays coming out, but there are very few plays in circulation that people are doing consistently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because of that, so many actors are forced to interact with plays that just don't get them excited. Like they have to force themselves to be excited.
Right.
And so what you're starting to see more and more now is that playwrights will, yes, there's workshopping, but playwrights will write a play and then we'll get the actors and then edit as much as they can to fit whoever there is in front of them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And the second that it started happening,
why wouldn't you do that?
Why exactly? Why would you not do that? Why would you not want to actually collaborate, and for the people that are working on it to actually have a good ass time?
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah.
I want the people who play on my stuff to be proud of what they did.
Yeah.
And I want it to actually be them, so they don't have to be like, yeah, I did what he wanted. It was kind of dumb. Which is what every single concert has ever been in orchestra. It's like, yeah, we did what he wanted. It was kind of dumb, you know. And like, why do people pay to see this? Like,
right.
Whereas this, it's like
the MSO.
Everyone here wanted to be here, and what they played was really what they wanted to play, and they were excited about what they played. So come listen to it. You know. And I also don't want it to just be the me show.
Right. Like, or else you'd be called Jonathan Hodges.
Exactly. And so I am still writing the songs, and I'm still writing the music that I send to them for them to play on. And a lot of the people I do record, actually, they come to my place and I record them. But a lot of them just record their own stuff wherever they are. And for the new record, people were all over the country. My drum players in Nashville, my sister Caroline, who sang on one of the tracks, was in Michigan. One of the guitar players two of the guitar players in Georgia. Like, they're all over the place.
Right.
Cincinnati, Ohio, that's where the sax player is. Yeah. So I never play wind instruments. I don't do that. If you hear violin, if you hear guitar, voice, whistling, that kind of stuff, that's probably.
I also heard you whenever we came in today. I heard you sizing up Audacity. What are you big into editing? I'm assuming you edit.
Yeah,
your
I do
stuff?
everything myself. So I record, mix, and master. But I can't size this. I work with GarageBand.
Yeah, right. I was about to say. I was like, I mean, anything does the trick, right?
No, it totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I was just kidding. And mostly it's because I know nothing about Audacity.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, like, for me, like, I probably would have used the same tone if you guys were using Logic or if you're using Pro Tools. I mean, they're all fine.
Yeah.
Just whatever gets the job done.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, if you're happy with the job, then like
then do it.
whatever.
That's it.
Right.
How has the pandemic affected your work, if at all, and like the doing of your work? Has it been stressful at all? Has it been easier? What has it done for you?
It was pretty frustrating at first. It remains frustrating. Because March of last year, I had just started playing live shows with an organization called So Far Sounds. I don't know if you guys know about them. It's a London-based company that's global. There's a So Far in like every major city in the world, which is really cool. And the way it works is it's like these secret concerts. Underground, they'll have 3 to 4 artists on each show. People buy tickets for the date, and they know like the geographical neighborhood of the city that they'll be in, but they do not know where it will be, and they do not know who will play. The artists find out a little bit more information. We found out where it will be a couple days before, and that's it. So we don't know who else is playing either. So like, I'm pretty sure very
That's cool.
famous people have played these. So like, you might show up to one and like Paul McCartney's there, or Adele is there, or I've reached the end of the modern pop stars I know. William Eyelash, she might be. And so it's a really, really cool thing, and it's very difficult to get in. And so I had been sitting in my recordings, my records for like 3 years and never heard anything. And then a buddy of mine who I'd known from a couple of years ago got a show with them. And I reached out to him because I saw it somehow. And I was like, do you need improv violin with what you're doing? Because I'd love to come play improv violin with you. And he was like, yeah, it sounds great. So we did it. And then I like kind of got close to the guy running it. And I was like, I wrote this song called Tornadoes in Dallas. And it was like right after. Like, can I play it at the end? And he was like, yeah. And they have a rule, which is if you've played a So Far show, you are now a So Far artist. And if you're a So Far artist, you get precedence and you get more shows.
Oh my god.
And so I got to play, and then they hooked me up, and I got my first show, and I played to over 75 people. It was packed, and it went really well, and they booked me for like 2 more, and then COVID shut everything down. And it was so great because it was 75 people I didn't know.
Yeah.
And they're very intimate shows.
Yeah.
Like you have a 30, 20 minutes.
It's like 75 people that want to be there.
Ideally
And
it is
not because-
unbiased
because-
people.
Right.
Yeah.
Who actually are looking to listen
And
to
the
music.
rules of these shows, no talking.
That's awesome.
So everyone that's there paid a lot of money to be there, and they want to be there. They want to interact and connect with you. So every four's dream. And so,
Right.
And then it all got shut down. So, and it hasn't come back. So that was very sad and disappointing because it was like, I finally doing it. You know, like I have the whole discography, I've recorded all the records, I have all the songs, and now I get to really like play it in front of people's faces rather than just scream into the void of the internet. So that was disappointing. But on the other hand, I got married in 2020, May, and so we got to start our life together in on some level like a less stressful environment. Like we actually just got to hang out a bunch, which I don't want this to sound like I'm indifferent to the suffering of others.
Yeah.
There was a lot of suffering that took place. We did suffer. There was some very sad stuff that happened, but you know, there was a lot of nice stuff too There's like kind of hidden in there. And so it gave me also all the time I needed to record the record. So I've been writing all the songs, and I hadn't recorded any of it, and now I had all this time. I could just record it. Didn't need to drive anywhere and I could just taught all my students online. And so there was nice stuff and sad stuff. I guess like there is for anybody from last year.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I wrote a song called Goodbye COVID-19, but other than that, it didn't really particularly interact with the songwriting. Most of the stuff going on in our lives that the record is actually about was completely divorced of the trauma, the international trauma of 2020.
Were they written during that time?
Some of them were, and some of them were written far in advance.
I see. Like tornadoes in Dallas.
Right, so that's written a few days after the tornadoes touched down in October of 2019. So, that's a little ways back to be on a 2021 record. Right. Especially because I released a record in 2020.
Right.
So,
and you're like, I'm just going to keep this one.
Yeah, we're going to hang out of that one.
Right.
I think I released it early to just prove that, see, I wrote it a few days after. Look how real.
I remember that. I remember listening to it and being like, oh, there it is. And then I saw it on this album and I was like,
but I did re-record it for the record.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So, I mean, if you go back and look, because the one that I released a few days after is just me and a guitar in a noisy hallway, which I kind of liked because I wanted it to sound like Dallas was still alive and walking around. Because depending on where you lived, it was like super, like the world had ended. Yeah. And then in other places of Dallas, it was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, especially because there were some
the weather was great outside. What do you mean?
Especially
for a walk last night.
It was especially weird because you would go to some neighborhoods and you would see a perfectly sound, totally untouched, normal building next to an entirely decimated one. Yeah. And you're like, it just never really crossed your mind that's how tornadoes work. Yeah. That it's like it touches something and it destroys it.
And then it doesn't touch something.
And then fine. That's it. Yeah. It's so weird to see. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
The difference between the two recordings actually is a pretty good segue into my next question, which is, what do your live concerts look like? Because you record with plenty of layers and plenty of sounds, but it sounds like you perform by yourself, yeah?
Yeah, a lot of the time it's by myself. So I recently, I guess because of the pandemic or whatever, we did a I got music videos for the first time.
Oh, there we go.
Which was really crazy. Yeah. So I have like 3 real music videos for 3 tracks all of Seasons of Limbo, and then we did a bunch of live take videos, which are basically exactly what a live show is like if I'm the only one there. So sometimes I'll have some other people. I don't know if you guys knew like Jeff Tullis or Travis Carroll. They frequently play with me. So Travis came up from Houston. We just played a show on Sunday, all 3 of us together.
God, so fucking good guitar.
So, and Travis actually plays a lot on this record. He sings a lot too.
I had no idea.
Me neither.
I love that man.
He is so talented.
Travis Carroll's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jeff Tullis plays all the bass.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're right.
He's incredible. And so we play shows together, but then I did this incredible cinematographer, director guy, Jordan Gracie is his name, just kind of came out of nowhere and followed me on Instagram. And I clicked on his profile and I saw that he shot music videos and had worked in the video world for a long time. And so I sent him a message and I was like, hey, do you want to do a music video? And he was like, I just found you on Bandcamp on accident. I loved your stuff, and I wanted to friend request you just in case you wanted a music video. But like, yeah, I really want to. And I was like, what? So I sent him the whole record like a couple of months before it was really done.
Oh my god.
He listened to the whole thing, and he had all these ideas for what he wanted to do. And so we shot the music video for Traffic, and we went out to Rose. Why can I not?
The first thing that comes to mind is Rosedale, but I don't. I don't think that's it.
But you went to a town in
Anyway,
Texas.
we went to a town in Texas. It was super cool, and he like called the town square or whatever, and they let us film there. And like, we also got to film at this 1930s speakeasy ruin. Like, it's a super cool video. Like, it's very fun. And then he wanted to do more stuff, and he wanted to do like a live take video. So he came over and set up all his stuff in my apartment. He had all these big lights and 2 massive cameras. And he was like, just go. And so I played a continuous set in one take of like 25 minutes. And it was great.
Wow.
And then that video's on YouTube now. And so, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So that if you really wanted to know what a live show is like,
That's
it's
it.
only there. Go watch it. It's there. You can see it.
What determines the order of the song that you put on your record? Because you brought up Traffic, and it immediately reminded me that Traffic is the first song off of Seasons of Limbo. But I am curious as to like why specifically is that your first song? And then like, for example, Goodbye COVID-19 is in the middle, and Tornadoes in Dallas is towards the end, and like so. I mean, obviously timeline wise, it's flipped, but but what brings you to your track list and the order of said track list?
So this is like the worst part about how I write, because I don't walk into the project with an outline of what I want to cover, right? I think there's no manufacturing going on. So like you guys were talking about, like, it's something you said that was really funny to me about All I'll Need, where it was like, but it's like, it doesn't come out of nowhere, like you're totally happy with it. And I was like, that's hilarious, because when I first put the record together and I was trying out different orderings of the tracks and sending them to people, like, what do you think of this? And I'd send a different order to one person, a different order to another person, and say like, what do you think about it and why? And almost everyone would be like, yeah, this works fine, just All I'll Need is weird and it doesn't belong. And I was like, dang it! Because I was super afraid that was true. Right? Because it's so different.
Yeah.
It is so different. It's the only track on the record that's keyboard. It doesn't even pretend to be piano. Like, it's actually keyboard. Yeah. And everything is a major 7 chord, and there's a saxophone, and there's like this crazy bass line, and then like a string quartet arrangement of a hymn at the end. Like, there is nothing about this that is anything even remotely related to this like alt Texas country, My Name is Buddy Holly record that I've made. And so it really bummed me out and made me sad. And
do you think that's because like it's towards the end of the record? Like I think it's a third to last song on the record that people have this expectation of what else the record's going to sound like.
You've already established conventions.
Those ideas were all based upon bad orderings of the tracks. So maybe I don't understand your question.
So I think how I was like envisioning it is that when you send somebody the record, and I guess bold of me to assume that you were sending them like the track list of what we have now, right? No. Okay. So they were hearing All I Need.
Yeah. So like one of the listings, I put it second on the record, and the reason is it's a sibling track with the second track of my very first record, Intimatitudes. They have very similar song forms, and they both end with instrumental covers of famous hymns. And they're both about kind of traumatic, unfortunate relationships. All I'll Need happens to be about SMU and the fact that I managed to find Cynthia at a place as dismal as SMU, and Hurt Us, which is the track off of Intimatitudes, is about a really stressful, unfortunate relationship with a estranged family member that actually is now better. So that's good.
That's good.
But so I put it second because it was like, oh, they're both second. That totally doesn't work. There were a couple things that I knew. Like, I knew Traffic started it, and I knew Where Are My People ends it. I knew that. I had no idea what the fuck to do with the rest. And that was really sad, because ultimately what you end up having to do is like put it all in a playlist and then just hit shuffle. And every few days shuffle it again and be like, so that doesn't work at all. And then sometimes it's like putting together a puzzle where like you can't like literally put the whole puzzle together. You put together like a section and then you like transport the section to inside.
Yeah, because you know that works. So let's see what goes around. Right.
So I like had my borders, which was traffic and where are my people, and I had to fill in the middle. And so some of that was these 3 songs work. Where do I put these 3 songs?
Yeah.
And then it just so happened that the ordering just kind of happened one day, and I was like, I think it's this, but I don't know.
Huh.
And then I was like, nope, that's what it is. I'm done. It's done. That's what it is. And then Travis wrote this incredible piece for a blog about the record and how he thinks the first half of the record is about like physical reality and the last half of the record is all about spiritual reality, and how the last half of the record is basically just one long prayer and the first half is just kind of general lamentations about having to live here.
Sure.
And so I was like, wait, there was like a purpose, and I didn't even know. That's what I was doing, you know.
That makes sense. Though. That makes sense that it just kind of fell into place like that. And now that you're mentioning Travis, I am curious. Who is your okay, break it to me person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so I have 2. Travis is one of them,
and
then this other guy, Michael Minkoff, is another. And like Travis, but I have a lot of them. Do you guys know?
Right.
Do you guys know Reed Mulliken?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of them.
Yeah. Didn't he just finish his like thesis or something?
He just finished. I think he's finishing up his master's.
All right. Okay. Cool.
For like vocal performance at TCU.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah. And I have a bunch of other people that are just super harsh critics because I would prefer to surround myself with those people.
Yeah.
Because I'll know. And so like I always call Travis the first line of defense on keeping me from being mediocre.
Yeah.
Because he'll very kindly just tell me like no. And sometimes it's like, no, it's too on the nose, or no, that doesn't excite me, or no, that's bad and you're lazy. You know, it's kind of great.
Yeah.
And then my other friend, Michael, is just much more savage about it, where he's just like, why are you doing that? You know, and why did you do this? And typically he gets back to me after the record's released.
Oh, Michael, you asshole. That's absolute agony.
But it's totally fine, because either way, I stand by whatever it was I did, and I can only stand by it because it's not the last thing I'm doing.
Yeah, sure.
But like the album becomes a time capsule. It doesn't become a whole identity of self.
Exactly.
It's just an identity of self at that time.
That's a lovely, lovely way. Okay, I'm so glad you said that, because what is something about this album that you learned? You know what I mean? What did you learn? What are you like, this is the next thing I'm building on? What's a note that you consistently have to yourself that you were like, I need to challenge myself in this way?
I need to work with a studio.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to actually not just record my records in my room with one mic and GarageBand.
Sure.
Because
they're ready to
I think
go.
I've reached the kind of the end of what I can do sensibly that will still sound sort of convincing, especially as I'm starting to kind of grow a following. Like, I think, okay, now I need to actually start working with real stuff. And I'm excited about that, but it's also kind of scary. Because now it's kind of like you really have to put your money on it. And whereas before it was like, well, I spent, however much money on this microphone, but I definitely more than paid for it with itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of go into my bedroom whenever I have time and mess around. And it's not like I'm on the clock or paying for someone's time. I just do what I want until I'm happy.
Right.
And whereas with this, it's like, if I work with a producer or even just recording engineers, like, when I go into the studio, everything has to be on and ready to go right now. Like, gotta get it right now.
Right.
And I'm accustomed to that pressure somewhat because I've done some studio work for other people, and I'm typically pretty comfortable with it. But it's just a very different thing to have to bring what is yours, a very intimate, vulnerable thing, into a space like that where there is all that pressure. So I think that kind of scares me, but I think it's necessary. So I think that's my main note.
Yeah.
Because actually, and the thing is, when you have recorded and mixed and mastered it, by the time it's out, you hate it.
Because you spent so much
you listen to
time.
it so much, and you know which things just they weren't quite what you wanted them to be, and they never were going to be, so you kind of were like, whatever. And now, it's been so long since I listened to it. I listened to it recently because 2 new pretty big reviews came out this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa, these were really nice. Was it good? Hold on. And so I listened to it and I was like, wait, I think this is actually good.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that I've found very interesting about the trajectory of your career so far, is that usually people have to build this enormous fan base before they can start getting any sort of critical success. And you, that's how I found you, and that's how I started listening to your stuff consistently, is that I saw you started posting reviews or posting critics notes and everything, and I started reading and I was like, oh my gosh, he's getting rave reviews from these people. What the hell? What is he? And then I go
Jonathan Hodges, he may not be bad at what he does.
Oh shit, no. But it was fascinating, and you really have built up this reputation for yourself among pretty much all the critics as this very intellectual, very heady, very type of musician.
But I just have no fan base.
No, I'm wondering though, are you flattered by that? Are you going for that?
I mean, it's really kind and really encouraging. For me, it's like the fact that my nickname as a kid was Bomethius. I think some people, particularly at SMU, I was a very, I was the sort of person that split a room, there are people that either really like me or they really don't like me, and the people that really don't like me, maybe I egged it on, and I probably did, because there's that own self-deprecating, I hate myself too, and I'd love it if you hated me more. The people that don't like me, I think that they think I'm just trying to be as pretentious as possible. When in reality, sometimes that might be true, but I tried not to do that. And to some degree, this is really just how I think and process things. Mm-hmm. So all these critics, super heady intellectual stuff, I guess, but that's just who I am. I don't know.
It's weird to hear that as a compliment as opposed to a fact
sure.
of just by being
derision. Yeah, that's just or just that guy is so
yeah.
Right.
But there's POV attached to that statement where it's just why can't that just be what it is?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess for me it doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm just kind of oh, okay. And then so when they use adjectives like that, I don't really want to engage with that, but then when they start describing what it did for them, then I'm like, whoa, that's why I did it. I said in some interview with some platform called Quadio, they were like, so why do you do it? Because you really don't have a following. And I was like, I never got into this for the money. I'm strictly here for the tears. And to elevate the quality of my listeners' suffering. That's all I want.
Success.
That's such a good soundbite.
If other people
to elevate the quality, of your
suffering, and so if other people are crying, I did my job.
Yeah,
that's all I want. Yeah. I don't care about it. So when they have all these adjectives, I just skip, and then when they're like, "This made me cry," I'm like, "Yes!"
And that is just like you said. And to wrap back around, just like you said, that is a very Kierkegaard perspective.
Exactly.
Where it's you're going to be suffering anyway. You might as well enjoy it while you're here.
Let's play out a theoretical scenario then of let's say you write this record 10 years from now or 5 years, doesn't matter, and then every single song, tearjerker, right? And then everybody is crying for every song, and you hit that magnum opus, you hit that high. Do you think, and this is just, theoretical scenario, do you think then afterwards you would try to go back and get that high again? Or do you think, okay, so I got that, I'm going to take now my path completely different trajectory?
No. I don't think
it's
so.
There's not a top to this mountain. It just keeps going up.
Because, well, so it's a funny thing because, and this is something that critics point out, but it's also something that it seems self-evident to me, which is that every record's better than the last.
Yeah.
And that's been true for all my records. Which, I mean, it's kind of a rare thing. Like, you don't really get that with very many bands.
Mm-hmm.
You really don't. So for me, it's kind of terrifying that I'm doing that.
Because then there's an expectation.
Yeah,
Right.
This one will be better than the last. And that is really scary, especially when you put them out 1 year at a time, you know? Like, you don't.
And you're like, oh, now there's a timetable on me being better than
Yeah.
I was a year ago. Right. Oh, God, yeah.
And so, whenever I do, so like, Sweet Nothings did pretty okay, and they got like a perfect score from Atwood Magazine, and the guy that writes for me there, it's like a New York-based national, really big deal. The only reason the guy even listened to my record was because I tweeted at a writer. I was like, hey, do you accept submissions from unknown people? And he's like, sure, lol. And then I sent it, and he's like, wait, this might be the best record I've ever heard. And I was like, what?
Oh, shit, there we go.
Me? Yeah. Well,
Right.
it wasn't even that. I was like, wait, no, don't say that. It's only my third record. You know?
It's like, no, we're trying to build here. Yeah, right. That's sweet, but...
Yeah, and so it was kind of like, wait, but it's... And so I read it, his review, and I was like, but that's not... We're really trying to do more things. Like, this isn't the end, you know? Don't say it's perfect, because it's not. Like, it totally isn't.
Yeah.
And then...
But like if it's perfect, then like, okay, I'm done as an artist. Like I don't need to grow anymore because
Exactly.
I'm finished.
And also for listener expectations. Like, stand-up comedians always talk about how the worst thing you can say is talk about how funny a comedian is before they come on stage.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, the genius, the funny, the talented, the yada yada. Then everyone's expecting that, and the second that you're not that, they hate you.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, crap.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Right.
Like, if someone writes me a review, tell me what you didn't like. I kind of want to know.
Yeah.
But also...
Especially if you're known for being, like, reputable
Exactly.
music critics. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, I don't want to sound like some, you know, like totally pampered brats. Like, they gave me a 10. I just can't. Oh, my life is so hard. It's not that.
No.
It's just, you know, oh man, how do you go on from
Yeah.
this, you know? So, with your question, you know, 5 years from now you read this, I'm thinking about that all the time, you know, because people will say, you know, like, this was it. And then, and so like working on the record with Dave, the reason we did the record, there were quite a few. I wrote a whole blog post about it, but one of the reasons is because Dave had a really unhealthy view of his own creativity. Like, really unhealthy. Like, he would write a piece, like he would arrange some choral piece or something, he'd walk away, take a break, come back, and be so disgusted by everything that he'd seen that he'd print it off, he'd reformat his hard drive, completely delete the file, take what he printed off and light it on fire.
Oh my God.
Like, it's like, he actually did this.
Wow.
Like, it sounds like a joke, but he actually did that.
And it was not performative. This is something that he
No,
did
this is something he really
for
did.
himself. Yeah.
To protect
Wow.
the world from his atrocious ideas.
I'm terrified.
So it's really
Yeah.
sad. He writes really good poetry. And he had written a poem called A Amazing Tonic. Dave has also done basically every drug on the planet. And he has a very storied past.
Sure.
Today, he is a structural engineer with a degree in aerospace engineering. He owns his own firm, has 9 children, doesn't wear shoes, is aggressively Roman Catholic, and only listens to metal. And that's Dave.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also burns his poetry.
Yeah, burns his poetry.
Also burns poetry.
Oh, his music, yeah. And so he'd written this poem about a drug called AMT, which is like the queen mother of psychedelics.
Uh-huh.
And it was particularly in vogue in the 90s. And he had a lot of experiences on this drug. And so he and a buddy of his, who has since passed away, decided to both write what they call initialistic acrostic poems, which I think it's only their thing. Like, I don't really think anybody else has ever done this.
Yeah.
So the way it works is the drug is called AMT.
Amazing. Tonic.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the whole poem is written that way. 3 words at a time.
AMT.
And every 3 words begins with
Wow.
AMT. Ask me tomorrow about my things, about my... And it just
Wow.
keeps going like that for 2 pages. And it never, ever diverges from this, and it still manages to take you on quite an impressive story. Trip, so to say. And
I'm done. That's
so
good.
after Sweet Nothings, that review happened, and I was talking to Dave, and around that time, Dave and I had started just talking about nothing quite frequently, and it was really great. And when I was a kid, Dave and I were just great friends. He was like one of the few adults that would really take me as seriously as I took myself. Because I was the sort of kid, like at church, if an adult got on his knee to talk to me, I'd get on my knee to talk to him. So I didn't realize that the reason he was doing that was because I was small.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I guess we're doing this. And afterwards, I'm like, why did you do that? I was like, I thought that's what we were doing. I thought
it was a neat conversation.
You're right. Yeah, it's a
That's
neat conversation.
good.
And so Dave was the only one that took me as seriously as I took myself. He taught me to play chess. He taught me to play pool. We would just hang out. He'd tell me what was wrong with the theology I was being taught at school and which questions to ask my Sunday school teachers that would just make them insane. And that was our friendship. And so then we kind of rekindled it, after I transferred to SMU. And at some point I was like, it's gotten to the point where I haven't had a good idea in a really long time, and I'm kind of worried about it. And he was like, okay, well, I have this poem that I wrote when you were about 3 years old about this drug, AMT, that I had a bunch of experiences on. And I've always kind of tried to set it to music, and I worked with a few other musicians. It just never worked. So what if I sent it to you and you could see? And I was like, yes, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, and he hung up, and then he never sent it to me because he was terrified. And so I bugged him and texted him about it a bunch. And then finally he sent it to me, and the subject line was like, I should never have sent this to you. And then he sent it to me radio silent. And I read it, and read it, and I read it to Travis, and I read it to Reed, because they were my roommates at the time. And everyone was like, yeah, it's a really good poem. It totally doesn't need music. And I was like, damn it. And then typically when I'm writing, I'll take out my phone and hit record, so that whatever idea happens in the moment, I have it exactly as it was. Because the worst feeling in the world is when you have some minute portion of inspiration that is there, and then it evaporates. You can't remember what the fuck it was.
Right.
And so I took it out, and I still have this recording, and I read the whole poem out loud, and I just kind of meditated on it, and then I read the title, Amazing Tonic, and I was like, tonic. Well, in music theory, tonic is just the first pitch in whatever scale. Mm-hmm. And so if you just have tonic maze all the time, where it's going in between different keys all over the place and doing all this stuff, then it works.
Then it's
exactly how it works. And so the melody immediately happened, and then the chords immediately just happened, and the way that they're all kind of sort of connected.
And mathematically it is also making sense, right?
It's so exciting. And so I had the idea, and I recorded it that weekend, and I sent the demo to Dave. I hear nothing from Dave for many days, and then finally he calls me. He's like, I'm really sorry. I avoided your calls and didn't answer anything. I listened to what you sent, and I couldn't stop crying. And so, for me, that's my favorite sentence ever.
Right.
But also, it's whoa, okay, I think this is really cool, because it's fine. Dave is willing to admit that his art, what he created, can actually be used to make, he can contribute to something that could make him cry.
Right.
And that's the only song where I didn't touch the lyrics at all. I did nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
Actually just sang his poem. And so a couple nights later, I was hanging out with Travis, and he had listened to it, and he was like, it's awesome. And I found this photograph of Dave and I hanging out when I was 3, mm-hmm. and he, it was around the same time that he actually wrote the poem, and we're both making this really silly face, and that's the cover of the record. Mm. Is that picture. And so Travis was sitting, and he was like, what are you guys going to do with it? And I was like, well, it'll just be a silly single, and I have this photograph I just found of us, and so that will be the cover, and it'll just be a strange, whatever, because it's a super out there song, particularly for my genres.
Sure.
And then he looked at me and he was like, you guys should write an album. That's what Travis Carroll said to me, and I was like, yes. And I called Dave immediately, and Dave was like, this is Dave. And I was like, I was just talking to Travis about the song. He thinks we should write a whole record. And there was complete silence. And Dave breathes in the way he does when he's really nervous and not sure about what's happening. he was like, give me 15 minutes. And he hung up. And 15 minutes later, he calls me back. And he's like, okay, I'm in. Let's do it.
What were those 15 minutes for?
I know.
So he could, I don't know, beat himself on the back or something.
Light another piece of paper on
fire. I don't know.
Right.
And then he got it, and he was like, but listen, tomorrow I'll hate myself about this, so you have to hold me to it. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine. And so I made a Google Doc that night, and he lives in Dallas, Georgia, and I live in Dallas, Texas, and so we wrote it in Dallas.
Nice, cute.
So we just spent like, I think, 30 to 50 pages writing about the experiences we had. We both had experiences with psychedelics. We both had experiences with Kierkegaard. We both had experiences with really dogmatic, destructive Calvinism. We both had experiences with what it was like to be a child and have wonder and then to lose it. Like, so all this stuff, we had all these similar, but it wasn't like one of us had like influenced the other to have it.
Yeah.
Like, neither one of us were like, read Kierkegaard. Like, we just both had found Kierkegaard, or Kierkegaard had found us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we had all this stuff in common. And so I think in total we had, like, 10 song ideas that kind of got whittled down to 8. So it's a much shorter record in terms of the amount of songs, but it's still, 40 minutes or something.
Mm.
But, I mean, that's how that record came. Why am I telling you this?
I'm so interested, but like, was that then the most rewarding experience for you as an artist?
In some ways, yes, because at the end of it all, after it was done, Dave finally listened to the whole thing, and he called me, and he was like, this is the greatest gift I've ever received from anyone. And I was like, wow. And then he was like, and I've started writing again. Like,
wow.
He started doing art again, and I was like, wow, that's so awesome.
That's the pinnacle. That's it.
We did that.
Yeah.
We did this. It's so cool. And it's like this cool like family heirloom of like, that's
huge.
Something we did together. And
oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. What it must have meant to the rest of your family.
right. Like,
Man.
we all like have this thing that Dave.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, okay, now I remember how it all kind of works into what we were talking about. Dave, going into it, was like, every record you've put out is better than the last. And I think this one might be the best one. And I was like, well, it's definitely the best one so far. And then Seasons of Limbo came out. And I think Seasons of Limbo is a better record than Inadequate,
Right. And I'm sure that was, have you told Dave about that?
Oh, so we talked about it
Right.
for a long time, and he was like, he listened to it so many times, and he was like, it took me so many times to actually hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Inadequate is so big. Because Dave listens to metal. Like, he likes big things. And so he went big. Like, we have a track on there it has, like, if you want to talk about genre, like, changes, like this track called The Machine. The Machine is about leaving Calvinism, but it's 7 minutes, and it covers every genre you can think of, from like noir jazz to like carnival horror Tom Waits to Gregorian chant, back to carnival horror Tom Waits to Muse to like the most worshipful.
Oh, the most important muse.
And then worshipful music, like you've never, like it's sacred music is what it ends up. And like all that happens in 7 minutes, and it actually works. Like it actually makes sense. I call it Bomethian Rhapsody.
Oh, you. Was that all a setup for Bomethian Rhapsody? You had that hours ago. This has all been a ploy to get to Bomethian Rhapsody.
All I wanted to say to
Thank you and good night. No.
But for Dave, he likes big things.
Yeah.
And Seasons of Limbo is not big.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Seasons of Limbo is like my most intimate work to date, which is
Yeah.
why I like it the most.
Yeah.
Because that's what I want.
It really is, yeah.
But he told me he would go through the entire discography and listen from the first record all the way to Seasons of Limbo, and then tell me what he thinks of Seasons of Limbo.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you think there may be some year in the future where like you never land on like a track list or a series of songs, or you never get to the songs where I'm like, I'm happy with this work, I'm ready to release this work? Do you think, is that a possibility in your mind to you?
That I would like slave over a bunch of stuff and then.
But like actively choose then not to release it.
Yeah. So at first, I had a lot to prove, and I really wanted to prove that I could be clever, you know, and so with the early records, everything I wrote basically got released, which is horrible. Like, it was a really bad way to approach anything.
No, that's fair though.
Because the first draft of anything is probably garbage, and I released a lot of first drafts, so I regret that. But it's also, like you said, a time capsule.
Yeah.
Which is also like the most infuriating thing about being a creator is that at any given point when someone comes along and tells you that they really love such and so work, you really just want to show them what you're working on right now, but you can't, because by the time they hear it, you're already working on something right now that's actually better than that thing that you told them to listen to and talk.
There's nothing more heart-wrenching of an experience of going to a concert of somebody and they're performing a song that they wrote like 20 years ago, and you're like, and you think to yourself, like, you're still doing this? Like, do you still want to do this? Like,
right.
It feels like you're holding on.
Yeah.
So that was a cool thing about. So I saw Muse live. I don't really go to live shows. I can't stand them. They're sweaty, loud, and they're just not for me. But I went and saw Muse, and it had gotten to the point where I didn't really like listening to them anymore because it had just gotten old. Like, I've heard this, you know. It's just not doing it anymore. And I was interested to see if I would have that same experience seeing them live, because the only things they're going to play are like their biggest hits, which is all that anybody really listens to anyway. Listening to them live, I'm convinced it's the only way that you're meant to like consume the band. The records are there just to get your attention so you can go see them live, because listening to them play the same songs I'd heard a million times live was like when I heard Muse for the first time. It was that like mind splitting. Do you remember like how your brain was like, oh, this is all music? You know,
Right.
That was seeing them live.
Yeah.
And it was just incredible.
What specifically do you think caused that
I was
experience?
about to say, what is that?
What about those live performances brought you to that experience?
I think they actually want to be there. I think they want to be there.
And so just like having that emotion just radiate off of them, you're like, that. Therefore, I want to be here too.
But it's also like Muse wins awards every year for having the best live show out there, like internationally. Like they've just perfected like the way the lights and the screens. Like it's just like the whole thing is just the most. Like it's just over the top. Like I hated music for a week after seeing them live. I'm not kidding. Like
You're saying that you...
I hated music for a week after I saw Muse live.
Because you were never going to find something as magical as that.
And my music was never, ever going to be that.
Okay, yeah.
It was never going to be that.
Even though that's such an unfair expectation of yourself. Yeah.
But it was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, there's no way I could do that or make anyone feel what I just felt for like 2 hours straight. And then I told Dave, I was like, look, dude, because he was going to Lollapalooza or something. He goes to some thing every year. And he was like, I'm going to see Muse. And I was like, all right, look, dude, after you see them, you're going to hate music. I promise you, for at least a week. And he was like, okay. And he's like, look, I've seen Radiohead, I've seen these other bands. Like, everyone's like, when you see this band, it will blow your mind. And he was like, you know. And so he went and he called me afterwards and he was like, okay, that was completely different than anything I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. And it's simply the radiating quality of, like, let us experience this right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And also, like, I think it's also mind-splitting that much sound and that many complex lines are all happening just because of 3, maybe 4 people. Like, they have a guy that helps them with the synths or whatever, but it's basically 3 guys. And they're creating all of this sound, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Why is Traffic your first song?
Because I think it's really funny and really dark and very sad, and it sounds like Buddy Holly, and I think it introduces what the record is going to be the best, which is we don't really love people until after. So like the reason I wrote the song was I was driving down 75 and I saw this horrible accident, but before I saw the accident, someone had just cut me off and I was super mad, and I was like, just weaving a tapestry of obscenities and cursing this man and all of his generations, to the fifth and sixth. And then this horrible wreck occurs, and I was like, oh my goodness, that could have been me. That could have been this. I mean, why did I totally despise everything about this person and feel pity about? Well, it's because I'm only thinking about myself. This guy inconvenienced me, and this guy reminded me that I could die tomorrow or right now. And that feels bad and sad. And then I was like, we don't love strangers until after they're victims. And that is the worst.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that song. But this song kind of has this happy feel. And it just goes along like this. Well, it tells you why I'm convicted and why we all should be convicted, for having lived our lives this way.
Oh,
and so I thought it was kind of a fun introduction.
Yeah.
I think that's the perfect way to put it. I think that makes perfect sense now that I've heard that explanation.
Totally,
I'm like, that.
Sense.
Yes, indeed.
And that reminds me how because I'm a teacher as well, all my students that I have, there's this infuriating thing that for the first half of the year that I was teaching them, I'm just pulling my hair out because it's so annoying. But now it's been starting to it has started to make more and more sense. Is just like you said, we do not love people until they're victims to us. That also encourages people to be victims,
right?
To gain love,
right?
And so the first half of me teaching these middle schoolers, that is their strategy of getting people on their side is the pity party, is the this is why I'm unique and yada 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 and everything. And especially in theater, it's difficult. And then after a while, I was like, oh shit, this is how they talk. This is how they learned how to gain respect and love. And you're like, oh man, that's really so sad. Depressing to think about. Yeah, because it's very normal. It's very normal. That's so interesting. I need to go. And honestly, after this entire conversation, I'm obviously influenced too. I'm probably going to have to go back and listen to everything now. Now that I have the stories behind it, you know what I mean? Now that I'm like, oh, okay, different mindset, different context. And I'm going to think about Uncle Dave and shit, Yeah.
Let's start to wrap this up because we've been here for quite a moment in time.
Oh, yeah.
But Jonathan, aka Bomethius, where can the people find you and assist you and help you out and really learn to love who you are?
The best place is Bandcamp, because you can actually buy stuff there and they don't take everything. The worst place is Spotify and Apple Music.
Because you get none of it.
You get basically nothing, yeah. Right. So if you actually want to support me, please buy the stuff off of Bandcamp. But, I mean, I don't really care about that. More than anything, reach out and tell me what you think and what it did for you. If it did anything at all.
Hey, let's listen to music. I felt nothing. Yeah. I'm never going to listen. No.
Dang it. Okay, great.
Great. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, right. Can you tell me why? So, but I own Bomethius on everything. So,
nice.
You look me up on any social media or...
Yeah, Instagram at Bomethius.
Facebook Bomethius, YouTube Bomethius, TikTok Bomethius. That doesn't matter.
Oh, new TikToker.
I have a new TikTok. It's mostly just me ripping on fundamentalists. So if you have a background there, or if you are one yourself and you want to be outraged by the internet, you can go there and watch that. Love to share that with you.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute delight. You're the best.
This is a really, really fun interview.
Seriously,
I've done
the
some
best.
sad interviews. This is a fun one.
I'm glad it wasn't sad. I'm glad it wasn't a sad one.
I'm kind of disappointed it wasn't sad.
Well, because you guys actually asked questions that were indicative of the fact that you were interested in the conversation.
Oh, shit.
So it's having a conversation.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I did some that were very formulaic. This is what I ask fill-in-the-blank bands.
As opposed to an exploration of person/band/character.
Right.
Yeah,
there's none of that.
A shame. An absolute shame.
You just get really bizarre questions.
Yeah.
You're I don't even know.
Do you want to just stop this interview and be like, I actually did the interview last week on this other platform. If
Yeah.
you would like to go see those answers,
You'd like to...
go to,
I mean, for a lot of them, yeah, it was just copy and paste.
And you're like, okay, well, not this again. Yeah. Every time, man, every time. I'm glad. Well, then we'll have to invite you back for the next album. Next year, which is going to be
great.
Undoubtedly better than the last. No, I'm just fucking with you. No, we're excited to see what happens to you, and yeah, we'll have to reach out again and have you on again. Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank you.